Just when you thought it was safe to go to SeaWorld. Talk about some bad promotion. What up, Twitchers? I'm Eric Harrison. Welcome to the Death Twitch, and we're going to continue on this damn Jaws franchise review. We're getting through it. Almost there. Jaws 3D, 1983.
A creature alive today has survived millions of years of evolution. It lives to kill, a mindless eating machine that will attack and devour anything. One terrified you like nothing you have ever experienced when it captured your imagination and tapped your fear like no movie before it. Then, just when you thought it was safe to go back in the water, two continued the legend and spread the fear. Next summer, nature's most terrifying creature takes on an all-new dimension in an all-new adventure. And for the first time, the terror of Jaws will not stop at the edge of the screen. Jaws 3D. The third dimension is terror.
Alright, so Jaws 3 came out in 1983 and was directed by Joe Alves, who had been involved in the first two Jaws movies, I believe as a production designer and possibly even as an assistant director. The movie stars Dennis Quaid, Bess Armstrong, Louis Gossett Jr., and Leah Thompson. Many of you will recognize from the Back to the Future trilogy, the second of which features Marty McFly standing in front of a theater with a big Jaws hologram coming out. It's Jaws 19. This time it's really, really personal. And when is Back to the Future set? That's right, 2015. This fucking year. They should have been on Jaws 19 by now. Fucking slacking over there. Yeah, so who knew there was actually a connection between Jaws and Back to the Future?
I don't believe it. She got him in the water.
Never underestimate the power.
That's the power of love.
Speaking of movies that have a vague connection to Jaws 3, we now know where Jurassic World ripped their plot off from. Alright, so what's the plot of Jaws 3, or otherwise known as Jaws 3D? Well, we've got the son of Chief Brody from 1 and 2 now works at SeaWorld on the ocean because I guess he didn't get enough shark action, so he's just pushing the envelope and just fucking asking for it, basically. Anyway, he works at SeaWorld. A shark happens to get into the park and runs amok. Gosh, really, I could go a little bit deeper into the details of the plot, but I don't really need to. That just about sums it up perfectly. And it's in 3D, so shit comes out of the fucking screen at you like this. Yeah. Okay, so Jaws 3. The original idea, it was going to be called Jaws 3 People Zero. That's actually pretty funny. That's funny. The original idea was it was going to be a spoof, like a straight-up comedy, a spoof on the whole killer shark movie. I think it was the Universal ultimately didn't like that. They didn't want to make fun of what was probably their biggest selling movie ever. So they didn't want to make fun of it. They didn't want to turn it on its head. Somehow, somewhere along the way, somebody wound up developing this particular script set in SeaWorld. They couldn't get Roy Scheider back because he was like, fuck you guys. He didn't even want to do part 2. There was no way they were getting him back for part 3. So that's why they just, they wrote it about other characters. It was the studio that ultimately said, hey, we need to make these characters the sons of Chief Brody from part 1 and part 2 so that there's a connection. Now this, I think, is stupid. Even the producers and the writers thought it was stupid, but the studio was like, you have to do it. There's got to be a connection there. So it's dumb. Now, what are the odds that these poor kids would have a freaking shark incident in part 1, happen again in part 2, and now fucking again in part 3? Get away from the ocean, seriously. Just move to the middle of the United States, stay far away from the ocean as possible. I want to say I understand. I think it's actually a really good idea that they set this in an amusement park. It is a good idea for filming reasons. Now, they wanted to use the whole 3D gimmick, which was making a comeback in the early 80s, but with Friday the 13th in 3D and Amityville 3D or whatever. So they're like, hey, let's take advantage of that. It is the third movie. Might as well throw a D on the end of that shit and let's rake in the cash on this gimmick. But the idea why I think it was a good idea that they put this in a theme park is because, first of all, shooting in 3D is not easy. They have to have a special camera, special rig. Everything has to be precise. Then shooting in 3D on and under the water is a even bigger pain in the ass. So there was no way that they were ever going to do this out on the ocean itself. Having it in a contained theme park where they can control the water and they can control the elements makes perfect sense. So the one thing I do want to say though is I'm totally shocked that SeaWorld allowed their brand to be used in a movie about a theme park that goes off the rails, about a theme park that experiences a disaster that pretty much causes it to close down. They must have been real desperate for a promotion or something. I can't see like a big brand like that giving permission to a movie to like exploit their brand for something like that these days. Definitely, if they were trying to do Jaws 3D today, SeaWorld would be like, fuck no, and they'd have to rename it like Ocean World or some shit, or, Jurassic World. Jaws 3D. I've never seen it in 3D. I can't tell you what that's like. I can tell you the movie itself, I think, is relatively good. Like I said, I think they got definitely more of an original idea than the second one. The second one was a carbon copy of the first one without a good director. At least in part 3, they decided to actually try to come up with an original idea, and it is engaging. Like, this big shark gets caught in a amusement park and goes on a rampage, and so that's rather interesting. And I do like these characters too. I want to say that in this movie, Bess Armstrong, I feel like she steals the show. She outshines everybody. This woman has got a very naturalistic acting ability. It's one of the most engaging things about the whole movie. She outshines everybody. So Bess Armstrong, hell yeah, good on you. There's a running theme throughout all these Jaws movies. And what is it? It's greed is bad. Of course, it's like anti-capitalism or something. Of course, the guy that runs the theme park makes bad decisions based on trying to make a profit. This is like the anti-profit motive movie. It's anti-money, anti-greed. You make decisions based on trying to make a profit. A shark is going to kill innocent people. The greedy businessman is the one that gets people killed. And that's every Jaws plot ever. What else is about Jaws 3D? I thought it was a good movie. I feel like the 3D gimmick actually lessens the movie. It could have been a more solid killer shark flick if they weren't so concentrated on the 3D gimmick of coming in through the screen. Fuck that. Don't need that. Give us a killer shark on the loose in SeaWorld. It was already a good idea. Let's rate the sucker. I want to say that kind of in the same vein as the way I rated part 2, where I wanted to give it a 2.5 and I bumped it up to 2 3/4 based on Roy Scheider's performance. This is a movie I would give it a higher rating, but I'm actually going to bump it down to a 2 and 2.5 because of the 3D element. I think it would be a more solid movie if not for that. It's very distracting. Anyway, I want to thank you for... What? Holy shit. Alright, you know what? I know I must have forgotten something. Look at how short these notes are. I never had notes that short, ever. It's not even barely half a page. Alright, let's go pad this sucker out and make it look like a real review.